Perfect. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining for this 504 training this morning. My name is Emmy Taylor. I've been with PCG for about 2 years, and I'm a client success partner, meaning that I work with all the districts in Washington, answering their questions with IEP Online, whether that's for IDEA records or 504 records. I do these trainings. Before working for PCG and IEP Online, I was a secondary science teacher for many years. And so I'm excited to be here with all of you today. I know that your district, obviously uses IEP Online for special education records. And I was just hoping for you guys to introduce yourselves real quickly and tell me if you have any familiarity with IEP Online.
I'm Kendall.
I can start.
I think we're lagging a little bit. I'm Kendall. I'm an elementary school counselor, and I do not have any experience at all with IEP Online.
I'm Patty. I'm a high school counselor, also have no experience.
I'm Gina Johnson. I'm a school counselor at the middle school, and I have been on IEP Online, but it was like 8 or 9 years ago. Just a little teeny bit, though.
Thank you.
I'm Stephanie Schambeck. I'm the school psychologist for the middle school and high school here, so super familiar with IEP Online. So I'm here to just help and know the 504 side. So then if the school counselors have any questions, I can kind of help them through that. So
that sounds great. Well, welcome. I'm excited to have you all here today, and let's just go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to share my screen. Feel free as we're going through this, if you want to mute yourselves and come on mute to ask questions. You can use the chat. I have that open too. If you're unfamiliar with Google Teams, right, the chat should show at the top of your screen. Sometimes you have to click those 3 dots to make the chat appear. And let's go ahead. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. I'm going to zoom in a little so it's not too tiny for you. So as we're going through for today for our demo, I have 2 screens. So if it looks like I'm looking off in the distance, I'm looking at the screen I'm presenting. And instead of using your district's real site, we're going to use this fake Washington demo site. So we have fake students in here. So we're not like actually creating, real records, so we can kind of play around with it. And there's going to be just a few things, because it is a demo site, that looks slightly different than your normal district IEP Online site. And I'll try to point those out as we go. All right, so when you log into IEP Online, this is the screen that will appear. It would say your district's name up here where it says Washington. And then over here where we see the SIS import system. So IEP Online gets your student data from your SIS every night. So if a student's demographic information gets changed, maybe they enroll in a new school in the district, or if anything about that changes, it will import into IEP Online nightly. And so that's not something that like you have to manually input into IEP Online at all. It'll all be there, and I'll show you where that is. But when you log into your IEP Online system here, because this is a fake site, we don't see any dates. But what you should see for your district, it would be today's date, and you would see the student import file and the contact import file, and if there were any errors. Now, the reason that I highlight that is you can see that each day that date would update. So if for some reason you see a really old date, then that would be a sign to contact your admin, like, oh, something doesn't seem quite right. So this is where you would see your import info. Down here, we have a lot of links. So here you can see we have our OSPI links, but on this right side, this is what I want to highlight. So there's 3 sections. There's district materials that your district admin have us upload here for your reference. And then down here under state materials and global materials, These are all IEP Online documents, all for your reference. So if ever you're like, oh, I need to see a 504 manual, for example, I can't remember, I need a little help. So you can always click the Control F on your keyboard, type in 504, for example. And here we can see the 504 manual and really just the 504. The numbers afterwards, it just means how many downloads. So those numbers after the manual name don't mean anything. So this is a really great resource for if you have like questions, if you want a quick reference document or a manual. On the right side of your homepage is where all those live. Okay. Now we're ready to dive into IEP Online. So again, this is your homepage when you log in. You're going to come up here and click Services and Solutions on this menu, and you're going to click this first one where it says IEP Online. Based off your permissions levels, you might see like different drop downs. I have like all the permissions. That's why my drop down menu looks so large. But you're going to Services and Solutions, come to IEP Online, and then you're going to click this. Okay. If you have students assigned to your caseload, they will automatically appear when you click into IEP Online. If you don't have any student on your caseload, then this screen would show up as blank and you would have a student search menu come up. For this, looking at some of your staff members, can someone remind me, are you able to assign your own caseloads, or does the district admin assign that for you?
Do you mean on IEP Online, like adding it to the caseload manager?
Yeah.
I can add them, or like our SPED or student services secretary can add them. But I have admin online permission, so usually I do.
Okay, perfect. So like the counselors, you would set up their caseload for them?
Or I would set up their account to have admin abilities so they could just do
Okay,
it.
perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for explaining that, Stephanie. So it looks a little different on here. That's why I wanted to ask. There's going to be a few changes if you have that admin level permissions to search any student and add them to your caseload. And I'll explain that in just a sec. So these 8 students are on my caseload. And a few things, right? We see all of our typical columns that we would see in these sort of things. We have our ID number. Now, this is going to be a specific IEP Online ID number. I'm going to show you where you can see their SSID number, but on your main student search, this is their IEP Online number. Anything that's blue is a hyperlink, and it will take you directly to that tab for that student, and I'll show that in just a minute. So we can see their student name is a hyperlink. If we were to click that, it would go to their demographic tab. Here we have our active or inactive status. Again, this is something that imports from your student information system. Like I said, this is our demo site, so there's going to be a few things that look just like a little different than what you would expect to see. For example, these first 2 students don't have any status, and all of your students would have a status, whether that's active or inactive. Next, we see their birthday, their grade level, and their disability. So you can see here on my caseload, again, these are fake students. 4 of my students have IDEA records, and 1 has 504 records. Now, this is something, as I was getting ready for this training, something that your district currently has turned off. And as you're starting to do more 504s, I'm going to show you what it looks like with it turned on. And your admin, Stephanie, can decide if this is something you want. So IEP Online is set up that if a student has special education records, these timelines appear. And right now in your district for 504 records, it's turned off that there would be no timelines showing. this is what it's going to look like if we turn that on for you. And so as we go through, I'll kind of explain that. And Stephanie, you can let me know, or other admin, if this is something that you are not interested in. But I'm just going to kind of highlight it because there's some real benefits to having those timelines turned on. Hi. We see that for these students, we have that that referral date showing. Again, we can see it's blue. It's a hyperlink. If I were to click on it, it would take me directly to their referral tab. And again, I'm going to show you all these tabs in just a second. Next, we see that eligibility date and the plan date. Next to each of these dates, you'll see a column that says U/L. That stands for locked or unlocked. So the terminology in IEP Online is if the record is unlocked, that's a draft record, it's still being, edited. Once it is locked, it is finalized, you can no longer edit it. If you have, a lot of students on your caseload, you can search these columns and filter them by clicking the unlock lock at the top. So for example, if I'm looking at my plan records and I want to know, which students quickly have unlocked plan records, I could click this unlock for the plan, and it would re-filter all my students. So you can see right now it filtered it so students who have nothing appear at the top, then locked, then unlocked. If I want to reverse that order, I could click it again. And this way I could quickly see whether those students are on my caseload or student search, all the students, grouping them by like that unlocked type of record. The next few columns, these are very powerful columns. The CM stands for case manager and the OP is for other provider. So these two columns will appear if you have the admin access to assign your own caseloads. And so there's different levels, and Stephanie, I'm sure you know this, there's different levels of admin access. So someone could have like full admin access, they can run reports, that would probably be more like district level people. But if you give the counselors or other users the admin access to assign their own caseloads, they will see these two columns.
And I was going to mention too, Patty got dropped off of the meeting, and so she needs to be let back in. Just so I know. Yeah.
Thank
you
you.
let? Yeah.
I will let her back in when she pops up. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. So these CM and OP, like I said, they're super powerful because they're a quick, easy way to edit your caseload, add students, or remove them. And if you uncheck a box, it'll save and then you won't see that student anymore. So you would have to add them back in. So how this works, you can see for the top 5 students, I am the case manager for, and the bottom 3, I am the other provider for. If something were to change and I no longer, let's say Rachel, this first student, I'm no longer her primary case manager, I'm now her other provider, I could just simply uncheck the case manager, check the other provider, and click this button, update caseload. So it's a quick, easy way to add students or remove them from your caseload. If maybe I accidentally uncheck case manager and I'm back to being case manager, I'm no longer other provider, then I can click that back and update. Perfect. There's Patty. The only thing to be aware of with these buttons is if someone is already the case manager and you assign yourself as the case manager, you bump them off of that student. So with these two buttons, again, case manager or other provider, super easy to quick change. Make sure you click update caseload afterwards. I'm going to show you the second way you can update your caseload in just a sec. But that's the quickest, easiest way to update your caseload. This final checkbox will come back here at the end after we create some records. And you can see that only certain students have this checkbox on the far right. So you'll see like my top 5 students do, but my bottom 3 students do not have that checkbox. This checkbox is how you can print certain records from this student roster page, but the student has to have a finalized or a locked plan record in order for that button to appear. And we'll go through that at the end, kind of once we go through creating a record and showing what documents you can print from here. But if you see a student and they don't have that final, checkbox on the right side, it's because that plan record, that 504 plan record or special education, that plan record is not locked yet. Right now, any questions about this? Kind of our plan for today for the training. I'm going through our student roster page, and then we're going to go through and complete the referral, the eligibility, and the plan record for a 504 student to show that process. And again, if you have questions, feel free, unmute yourself, type in the chat, whatever works best for you. There's a few other things that I want to highlight from this page is perfect. Thank you, Kendall, for that feedback. Is you can do some reports from here that I think are super valuable if you're, dealing with a lot of students, you have a lot of dates that you need to keep on track of. So there's a few options. If we click print up here at the top, we can see like there's some options of we could print like a student roster page. If I click preview, you can see that it pulls up that list. So whether that's a case manager list that you're looking at, or you searched for students at a specific location, let's say, you could print all that document information, those dates, right? The student name, their ID, all in one page. The other way that I recommend doing this, because I think it's a little more valuable, is to put that information in an Excel document. So again, we have our students. If we click this export button, it'll download as an Excel file. Bring that over. And then the reason that I like Excel for this is because, let's say we freeze that top row. You could filter your students based off the plan meeting due date if you needed to see which dates are coming up, most recently that I need to be aware of. You can search, right, by 504 students if you have multiple students that you're dealing with. So opening that data in an Excel file, I think, opens up the possibilities for how applicable, right, that can be for you. One other button that I want to highlight real quick is this mailing info button. If you click it, it will open up the mailing information, that contact information for your students if you need to see, their addresses or something like that. That's what the mailing info button does. And here, again, like I said, this is a demo student, so it's pulling up. We have all of us as trainers entered as parents, so that's why, some of these students are pulling up that they have 5 parents. So again, our fake demo data sometimes looks a little odd, but if you were to pull this for your real students, you would see, right, their addresses and all that demographic info. All right, before we dive into a specific student, I want to talk through this Find Student button because it's really powerful, right? Maybe you have students that are not on your caseload that you still need to find and create records for, or if you need to add a student for your caseload, this has a wide variety to pull students. You can type in obviously their name, you can type in their first letter of their name, their full name, it'll narrow it down. Here for their student ID, again, this is their IEP online ID. This is an ID that gets created in the system for that student. So if you're looking maybe like in your SIS and you're looking at their student ID, right, we would recommend entering their SSID because that'll be the same, right, between your SIS and IEP online. You can enter their birth date. Down here for the school, this is some really good info, right, that you can narrow things down. Maybe you need to search all the students at a specific elementary school that are in grade 5. And so you could do that and it would pull up that list of students. You could also, if you wanted to search someone else, maybe you wanted to search one of your team members to see what students they have on their caseload, to see maybe if like you need to take that student over, whatever you need it for, you could type in even their last name. And if you want to know if they're the primary case manager, you could check that. If you want to know if they're the other provider, you could check that, or you could leave it blank and it would pull up all the students that they're somehow assigned to. If you come down here, this eligibility category, this would pull any student. I'm just gonna remove those filters. Any student, you could search by disability. So if a student has 504 records, their disability will show as 504. You could search for eligibility status. Maybe you need to find every student in your district that is eligible for 504. You could search that way. And then down here, you could also search for dates or anything specific like that. So for example, let's just say I wanted to search in my fake district, every student that's eligible for 504, they've had their 504 referral, they've had their 504 eligibility, now they're ready for a 504 plan. Here you can see, right, it pulls up a huge search. We could still do all the same things. We could still print, we could still export that data into an Excel file. So again, if you needed to search all the students who have 504 eligibility for a specific location, you could do that search and then export it and you'd have all that data. And again, you can also add yourself as their case manager or other provider if needed. Make sure, right, if you do check that, you click update caseload. And again, on this far right side, you see only certain students have that far right checkbox, and that's because those students have a locked 504 plan. If they don't, there's something, right, either missing or it's still in draft mode, that kind of thing. Final thing is I showed you how you can filter those columns. So again, for this example search, I've searched every student in this district that is 504 eligible. I could see if I needed to see like, okay, who is 504 eligible that has an unlocked 504 plan right now? Then I could click this lock unlock column at the top next to the plan, and it would pull up, or it's going to filter, right? So first time it does it by nothing locked, unlocked. But if I click it again, then it'll pull up all the unlocked 504 plans at the top. Some questions about like student searches or how to find a specific student in IEP Online?
Sorry, you cut out during your question. What was it?
Oh, I was just asking, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
If there's any questions about how you can find a specific student in IEP Online.
No, I don't think so. We were just mentioning that we don't have a ton of students, so it's a little bit easier on our end to search. And like I was saying, I don't ever use the unlocked, locked kind of search feature. But I think it's easier, like I said, because we don't have that many students. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Nice and easy. Love that.
yes, yeah.
All right. So let's say, for example, I do this student search and now I want to go back to my caseload. So I'm just going to click services and solutions, and click back into IEP Online. And this will pull up my caseload once it loads. Okay. So for these students, right, again, like I said, they're all my fake caseload students. We're going to come down here and we're going to pick a student that doesn't have any records. And so I'm going to pick this student here. I can see that they don't have any records. I see that their birthday is in November, they're in grade 3, and they're ready for that 504 referral. So I'm going to click on their student name, right? That's their hyperlink. And when I click on their name, it's going to take me to their demographic tab. So when you click on a student, you're going to see 4 tabs at the top: demographic tab, GT tab, which is like the referral tab, eligibility tab, and and plan tab. Now, IEP Online is a very linear system. It likes things in order. And so we're going to talk about the demographic tab first, but then as we move through this process, we need to do these tabs in order of GT, eligibility, and then plan. If you try to do things out of order, either the system won't let you or it could cause a little bit of issues. So we'll talk through all that. When you click on the student name, a few things to highlight is up top in this blue banner, you'll see the student ID. This is something that'll, as we go through the tabs, it'll always be up here at the top. So we'll have their student ID number, their name, their SIS status, whether that's active, inactive. This student, right, like we said, doesn't have any records yet, so they don't have this data. But if they had a disability category, it would pull up there, and any STIs added, right, mainly for special education records. Like we said at the beginning, all of the student data imports from your SIS nightly. So all of these fields are grayed out because that data comes from your SIS. You don't add anything here. So if, for example, you see maybe an issue, maybe their birth date is the wrong date, you would need to check your SIS, make sure that date is correct in there. And if the date is correct in your SIS, it's still not correct in IEP Online, then we would recommend reaching out to your admin so they could contact us and let us know something's going on with your import file. So that's just if you see something incorrect in here. But other than that, everything comes from your SIS. So we have their birth date, their age. Here for other ID, generally this is one of your SIS IDs that will import here. You can see their attending school, their assigned school, their languages, and if they had a case manager, the name would appear here. We're just going to quickly go through this left side columns because there's some that are super key to know about. If we click down to residence, we'll see the student's address. If for some reason you do not want that student address printing on any forms, you can come over here and check this box to not include that address on any forms. Again, this comes from your SIS, so if there's something, maybe their address isn't updated, right, all that would need to come from your SIS. Next, we see school, student details. We're going to come down here to contacts. So just like the student's information, all of the contact information is imported from your SIS. And so here, like I said, we have all of our trainers as parents for these students. This would be a lot of parent guardian info for one of your students, but you can see the relationship, phone numbers. If we click into the contact name for Jasmine, we can see their relationship, if they have custody, right, their email, and if they had an address in your SIS, then it would appear there as well. A few other tabs to highlight is this profile tab. And so this comes in handy with any preferred name. So here, if a student goes by a preferred name, this again is grayed out. It would have to import from your SIS. But let's say instead of Bethany, they want to go by Beth, then it would appear there. And you could click this checkbox to have Beth print on all of the records. The only one that would have to print the legal name is anything Medicaid related. Right. If you were to check that, we would want to make sure we click save. Transportation, this is where you could create a transportation form. So if we click create, we could create this transportation form if needed. We could add in the data. We're going to go through this, but anything that you see yellow in IEP Online is a required field. So here I can see that the school year is required, but the rest of the information is white. So right now, nothing else is required. Obviously, if you were filling this out, you would probably add more information, but that's a IEP Online kind of system-wide thing, is anything yellow is required. If we wanted to print this, we could click the print. Some districts use this frequently. Other districts, rarely create a transportation form, but you can see how it would print. Something else that's really important, and I'll talk through this, on the next few tabs, is a lot of the documents, especially draft documents, are going to open in another tab of your browser. So it's really important that your browser does not have the pop-up blocker enabled. So that's like a tips and tricks. If you have your pop-up blocker enabled, you will have issues in IEP Online downloading documents, opening drafts. So as you're getting ready to use this, make sure that your pop-up blocker on your browser is disabled. Going through the other tabs, we have our history tab. This is where you could see the history record of your student, changing districts perhaps, if they enrolled, re-enrolled, anything there with history. Coming down to caseload, this is the second way that you can update students on your caseload. So before we talked about on the student roster page, you could uncheck or check those two columns. Here, you could update your team. So if this student, let's say, had, 3 people added as their team, one person would be a case manager, perhaps, and the other people as other providers, you would see that list here of everyone who has this student on their caseload in some aspect. If you wanted to update that, you could click here to update. Then you have, right, all the students that would have access to that student, or sorry, all the users that would have access to that student. So you could add them, right, if they needed to be added as the primary case manager or as the other provider. This is the second way that you can not only add yourself, but if you have admin access, you could update the team as well if needed. If we were to make any changes, we would want to make sure to click save. And then we have 2 final tabs on this demographic. On the left is notes. So you could create a note here if there's something that you need to document and you want to make sure is, kept on the student's account. You could create and print those notes there. If you needed to do a records request, this is also where you would find that. Again, some districts use this a lot, some, rarely use it. So this is, again, anything that's yellow would be required to fill out, and we could kind of show you what that document looks like. So this is the authorization for release of records, and you would be able to fill that info out. I click back at the top of my demographic tab, it'll take me back to that student information main page for this kiddo. And now we're ready to dive in and create some records. Before we do that, I want to pause, see if there's any questions about this demographic tab.
Nope, we're good. I have Lisa and Patty both in here and they both say they're good. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the GT tab. Like I said, this is the referral tab. So this student doesn't have any records. For this example student, we're saying like the student hasn't had 5.0 records from a different district. They're a new student. They're getting referred for the first time. So when we click on this GT tab, there's a few buttons that I want to highlight that are going to show up on any tab. You've seen them so far, and this is caseload, student roster, find student. All right, so these will appear, and print will appear on all the tabs. So if you need to go back to the student roster at any point, to go back to your search or your caseload list, you can click that. If you need to do a new student search, you can click that. So those are just buttons that will always appear at the top of any tab. What we're going to click on is this create button on the far right side. And when we create that, we're going to have two options. So you'll see we have a guidance team referral to create or a special education referral. Now, this is going to sound really obvious, but it's a really, really common mistake is if we're referring this student for 504 services or 504 eligibility, we do not want to create a special education referral. We want to create that guidance team referral. I'm going to say that again, because again, I know it sounds really obvious at this point, but it's a really, really common mistake. And if you create the wrong type of referral, it will cause issues long-term for creating the right type of records for this student. So again, because we're creating a 504 referral, we want to create that guidance team referral. Once we select that, we're going to click create. And it pulls up that new record automatically. I'm going to go ahead and click back to my GT tab so you can see if, maybe we had started this and we come back the next day, we click on the GT tab, and this is what it looks like. So we have the guidance team is the meeting type and a few things. So here we have this unlock button. That is a signal that this is a draft document. It is not a locked, finalized record. It's still being edited. This paper icon is how you create or how you attach a document. So if, for example, we'll come back to this in a little bit, if I need to add a signature page, this is the button I would click on to add that, and I'll show you that in just a sec. And then we're going to have these compliance checks. So as we're creating any record in IEP Online, there's going to be certain compliance checks for that record. And they have to be at 100% complete in order to be able to finalize and lock that record. So right now, obviously we haven't added any data. We're at the red status. There's going to be 3 different statuses. That's red, right? We're really missing a lot of info. Yellow, maybe you're halfway there, and then green. And this is going to be, you're going to see these for the record overall, as well as each chunk of information that we're going to add. So if, for example, you're ever wondering like, hey, I've added some info, why is this record not ready to lock? You can click on that red or yellow or green symbol here, and it will show you all the things. If it's unchecked, it still needs to be completed. If we wanted to click directly on it, we could click it and it would take us to that information. Right now, I'm going to just go ahead and click out and click back on this title of this record. So as we're going through this, I like to say that I'm the system expert. You all are the content experts. So as we're doing this, I'm just going to enter some fake data. And again, you know, the real data that you would add in here. But for this training purpose, we're just going to add in some like test information. So again, anything that's yellow is required. My information pulls up here because I'm the one who just created this record. So whoever creates the record, it will autofill here, but if it should have someone else's name, you can quickly edit that information. For the referral information for these dates, I'm just going to use Monday as our example dates. And then you have to enter a time. You could click, as you use this more, you'll have some like save times that pull up. And I'm just going to type in that our meeting took place Monday at 8 a.m. If I wanted to add in a specific location, I could. Maybe this happened in the conference room. And if for some reason it's a different school than what appears, you could also edit that if needed. Down here, we see that these are yellow. We have to add a purpose to our meeting. So for this student, I'm just going to say we're going to review their performance and attendance. Now, IEP Online will save your data. If we were to click to a new tab, it will save it. But I always recommend clicking that save button anyway, because the last thing we want to do is accidentally lose any data we've spent time adding. So I'm going to click that save button. And when I do that, you can see that this notification tab changed from red to green. We never even had that yellow status of halfway because we added in all the required information for that tab. And this is something that will change based off some of your district's procedures, how they have it coded, or right, the different records we're creating, right? Those requirements will be different. But just because we don't have to add the information doesn't mean we don't want to add that information, student specific, scenario specific. So I want to show you these tabs anyway quickly. So below the meeting information, we have the parental contact. And again, this is something that your district will set up based off like what your district requirements are. They can add this in the codes. So if we want to add a contact attempt, the options that appear here are district specific, and certain ones would meet those compliance requirements. So for this student, I'm going to pick that it was a letter. Let's say I mailed it also on Monday, and I'm going to select myself and Jasmine as the two parents that I sent this to. If there was someone else that I sent it to, I could also add other. You'll see that when I check other, then that other field becomes required to type in what information. If I wanted to add the response, I could. You can see that it's not required, it's not yellow, but let's say that I want to say, yes, I talked to these two parents on Monday and they can attend the meeting. If there was an alternate attendance or a different response, obviously I could add that. If I wanted to add some notes when I, talk to the parents, I could add any notes if I wanted to. Again, not yellow, not required, just an additional feature. I want to make sure I click save. And here you can see this is how it will populate with the letter. If for some reason I made a mistake, I want to start from scratch, I need to delete this entry, I could just click this red cross here on the far right. Anytime you see that, it would be deleting something. So I could just, right, it'll confirm that I want to delete this. If I in fact do, I can just confirm and it's gone. A few other things on this notification tab is we can add meeting participants. Again, this is something that your district has set up in their admin online codes, what specific participants are required for each type of record. If I wanted to add in, the special education teacher's name, I could add in their name here. I could add in their email. This is not required, but it's an option if I wanted to. Change that to something else. Again, if someone appears here and we say, you know what, the general education teacher doesn't need to be at this meeting, they're not required, you can just cancel out of that and delete them from that view. Again, the ones that you'll be able to delete or not depend on your district and what they have set up. The final two things down here are some banks of users or banks of participants. And so what this means is, let's say you always have the same special education teacher attending all the meetings that you're setting up. Instead of adding their name every single time to that meeting participant tab, like we just showed, you could add them to your bank of users or participants. So then every time you have a meeting, you can just come here and click this plus button. So it's just a way, if you have the same person that attends all your meetings, maybe the same admin comes to every single meeting you have, you can just add them as a participant. If you want to add something for their position or agency or email, you could add that here. If you wanted to add multiple people to this, you could click this plus button, add in, right, the teacher's name, multiple people to your bank, you could, and then you could navigate through it here with these arrows. For this right now, I just want to add in this one admin. They come to all my meetings, so I'm going to click save. And so now I can add this first name, last name, admin. I click this button, add them to my meeting. And now when I go back to my meeting participant tab, you'll see this first name, last name, admin is there. Now, right, I can delete that extra admin person because I have my saved admin that's coming. And that's a quick way, again, if you have the same people attending all your meetings, to add them and save a little time for each student's record that you're creating. And this is something that, like, you can create your own bank. Few other tabs, so you'll see coming down that the next tab that has any requirement is the decision tab. And we know that it has a requirement because it has that status symbol on the left side. If, for example, let's say I've done this and I'm confused, I'm unsure what I need to complete in order to finish this referral, we could click out and click that GT to come out of the record. And we could see that, okay, those dates that I've added show up here now. And now my status symbol is yellow for the overall record. If I click that yellow diamond, you'll see now, okay, all the notification requirements, those are all complete. That's what we just did. But I still have to do the decision tab. If I'm confused, where do I find that? I can click right on that tab or right on that blue link, and it'll take me directly to that decision tab. Right now, this is a pretty simple record, but as we move through this process, those hyperlinks are a quick, easy way to go directly where that information is still being required. If, again, you're completing something over multiple days, it's easy to get a little confused. For this decision, right, we have our recommendation list. We could refer them to special education, refer to 504. You can see all the options for this student. I'm going to refer them to 504, and I'm going to click save. You can see, right, that my two required tabs are now green. The other way that you can see your status is up here at the top. You see that my status now says 100% because both those tabs are green. This is the other way. If you don't want to like click out of the record to see what you're missing, you can click that percentage at the top and it'll pull up all the requirements also. So there's two different ways, and we'll show this as we move forward because it's a really nice, easy way to see again what information is required. So right now we're at 100%. We could go through here and lock it. Right now I want to go through these extra tabs so you have an idea of what they look like. For this reason tab, you could add in any data here. For strategies, same kind of thing, summary of strategies used to date. You can add in your text. For performance, again, you can see all of these tabs not only don't have that compliance check on the side because nothing's required, we see that all the fields are also white instead of yellow. So that's a double way to check that it's not required. But we could add in present levels for reading, math, written language, strengths, needs, other considerations. So there's a lot of places to add in very specific data for the student for their referral. If we want to add in any minutes, we could add in the teacher, the classroom. If we have any records that we want to scan in, we could click create and add in those documents and details. Then we have our decision tab, which we already have added. Then we have our prior notice tab. And again, for this record, it's not showing as required, but we could add in this information if needed. And so we could add in, I'm going to use that same Monday date. We could say that, yes, the 504 procedures and parental rights were provided and explained. We could propose and initiate. Whatever we want to add in, we can. If we go to our narrative tab of the prior notice, this is again where we can add in a lot more details for this process. Now, let's say for this example student, I've added everything I need to. I'm going to go ahead and click out of this record. So click back on that GT tab. I see, right, my dates. I see my decision to refer to 504. I'm at a green status dot. Everything's ready to lock this. If, for example, before we lock it, let's say I wanted to upload, I did that real quick. If I wanted to upload a document, maybe something that the parent sent or something with their signatures, I could click on this paper icon and it'll pull this up. So I can attach a file. I would choose my file. Let me come here. I'm going to add my signature page. This is just an example of a page that I want to add. And I could classify it. This list of options, again, is something district specific for your list. But let's say I'm classifying it as a signature page. I'm ready to upload it. So now we can see, right, that we have an attachment with this referral document. If I wanted to download it, I could click this download button and it'll pull up as a download on all my downloads, right? So you can see it's opening real quick. Nothing fancy. That's my example signature page, but that's how you would download it through this download button. If maybe I classified it incorrectly, I could change it here. And if, for example, oh, I have a new updated version of this page, let me attach that instead. I need to delete this other one. I could come here and click that X for deleting it. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. And you'll see that we have like a new symbol right here, this blue circle with a paper clip. And that just symbolizes that there is an attachment uploaded, that signature page we just did. Now, after all this, I'm ready to lock this record. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this padlock button here on the left side. And by locking it, right, that means that it's finalized. We're ready to move forward with the process and I can no longer edit it. When I click that padlock button, it'll confirm that you want to lock it. I can confirm. And once it's locked, we can click back on this paper icon and we see our finalized record. Okay, we can click that download button to download that finalized PDF of that record. And it has all of this information. One thing that I forgot to show you, and I want to unlock it real quick to show this, is as you're working through any record, you can print the draft version of that at any point. And so how you print that draft version, no matter what tab you're at on the left side, you'll always see this print button. And so you can click print. You can check the pages you want. Maybe you only want the Medicaid consent. Maybe you want them all. If you want them all, you can just check this box at the top and you can click preview. And so this will open again in another tab of your browser. So again, with that pop-up blocker, if for some reason it is enabled, it will look like nothing's happening. No document will ever open. And so if you ever see that, that's your reminder, okay, disable that pop-up blocker. And again, we have our draft. We could print this out, share it to the parents, share it to the team. I'm going to relock it so we're ready to move forward. Now, we don't recommend locking and unlocking multiple times, right? That was just, I wanted to show you that draft printing. Okay, so right now we've done our 504 referral, that guidance team referral, and we're ready to move on to that 504 eligibility. Before we move on to the 504 eligibility, are there any questions so far?
No, not on our end.
Thank you.
And not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. Let's go ahead and move on. So now that we've done the GT referral, we can move on to our eligibility tab. Again, we'll see the same things up here, all those same buttons that we see on every tab. We see our create button, and we're going to go ahead and click that. And we should only see this one option, 504 eligibility. That's exactly what we want to do. And again, if for some reason you created the wrong referral, if you accidentally created the special education referral instead, you would see special education records as an option to create. And that would be a hint to you of like, ooh, I must have done something wrong because I should only see 504 eligibility as my option. All right, we're going to go ahead and click create. And again, we're going to see a lot of the same kind of like system-wide concepts. We see 3 tabs are required. We see that red status symbol on the far left side. We see a lot of yellow fields. Because I used Monday for my referral, I'm just going to go ahead and use Tuesday for my eligibility. With that, if for some reason you're having your meetings all on the same day, maybe that's the only time parents could come in, whatever the reason is, the system, like I said, is very linear. So it needs things in order to process and link everything correctly. So if my referral and my eligibility are at the same date, I need to make sure when I add in my time for my eligibility that it occurs at least 5 minutes after the previous record. So for here, if I wanted, maybe the parents came in on Monday, let's just go ahead and stick with that date then. Consent for evaluation, yes, when they came in, I got consent. I'm going to go ahead and click save. When I come to the notification and I add my meeting information, if it happened on Monday, remember the referral we put in on Monday at 8 a.m. If I were to put in Monday at 8 a.m. for the eligibility, it would cause some issues down the road of linking. So again, it should be at least 5 minutes later. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and add that it happened at 8:05 a.m. And that's just something, a system kind of quirk to be aware of, that it all needs to happen in a linear way. Again, we can see that certain fields I could add the location. We have our purpose down here that we need to add. So I'm going to click determine eligibility for 504. Again, if it was other, you can see if I check other, then I need to fill in some information of like what is the other purpose. But if I uncheck it, it's no longer required. And click save. Now, let's say, for example, again, I'm working on this eligibility, but I'm not quite sure what I'm missing. Again, we can click on that 80% at the top to see all those compliance checks. So we can see, right, the 2 tabs we've done so far are complete. We just have that decision tab. Now, I know right now it seems like pretty obvious, like what we're missing, but as you do this more and more, and the records get a little more complicated, especially with the 504 plan, those percentages for the compliance things really come in handy, of helping kind of narrow down what am I missing, what am I overlooking.
Can I
Even
ask a
though the
quick question?
notification
Oh,
tab.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I just don't want to forget is so on the IEP side, when we have the consent form, when it prints, it has like a signature page and all of that built in. Does the 504 side have that, or do they have to create their own consent form and upload that?
Let's go ahead and print this and see.
Okay.
I don't know that off the top of my head, so let's print. We can print that consent. We can preview it. Loading. So this is a great reminder too of like, you don't need to be complete with the record to print a draft of any page at any point. You can do that at any point. So this is what that 504 notification consent looks like. I can make that a little bigger.
Thank you.
Yes, perfect. Great question. Looking through the notification tab, again, nothing else is required at this point, but they're going to look very similar to the referral notification tab we just did. We could add in that parent contact if we wanted to. Again, depending on how you're meeting with them, maybe I talked to mom on the phone on Monday. I could add in the response if I wanted. And again, it would pull up there. We could add in our meeting participants. We can edit this list. Again, certain ones might not be able to be deleted based off your district requirements. If they weren't able to be deleted, then it would show as yellow as required for that. So that would be your hint that, oh, I can't delete the school psych. They are yellow, they're required, whichever that would be. Again, if you had anyone in your bank of participants, then you could quickly add them. You can see that even though I added first name, last name, admin to my referral, it's still pulling up here because I added them to my bank. So if they're coming to this meeting too, I could quickly add first name, last name to my meeting by that plus button. And again, I would see that on my meeting participants. So that's, again, those bank of participants really can save a lot of time if you are using the same staff members for a lot of your meetings. Let's go ahead and come down to our decision tab. And we can see that obviously this is a required tab, required fields. And this is a tab that's going to, based off your answer for the first question, determine what's required later on in this tab. So for here, we can see the question is, does the student have a physical or mental impairment? And so we can see the rest of that. And for this example student, I'm going to say yes. You see, once I click yes, more fields appear as required. So now that I've added yes, I need to add some of my text. Again, you guys are the content experts. You know exactly what you would type here. For right now, I'm just, adding my fake data so we can see the process. Next question says, does the physical or mental impairment affect one or more major life activities? If yes, identify the activity. So for this student, again, I'm going to say yes. And again, you'll see that as based off my answers, more things become required. So again, I can add in my text there, identifying that major life activity. Coming down to my next section, it says, does the physical or mental impairment substantially limit one or more major life activities? Okay, you can see the rest of that. It says substantially limit. This does not mean significantly restricted, right? All of this information. For this student example, I'm going to click yes. You can see that it's not required. If I were to click no, it would be required. So again, based off the info you add. And now this final question says, now taking mitigating measures back into consideration, does the student need accommodations for their educational needs to be met as adequately as those of their non-disabled peers? Again, for this student, I'm going to say yes. And the decision, you can see all the options, whether it's not eligible, eligible requires 504, if they exited, if the evaluation was terminated, and if they are eligible but does not require a 504 plan, right? So lots of options for this student. I'm going to say yes, they are eligible and they require a 504 plan. Right? If, for example, maybe we have a student where they exited, we could also add in some of these other options if they graduate, if they no longer meet eligibility. For this student, though, we want to make that 504 plan, so we're going to add that as our decision. I'm going to scroll up to the top, click save, and there we are. Okay, if, for example, I'm working on this and I forget, I just overlook that decision section. So I have most of it filled out, but I'm missing that decision section, and I click save. You'll see that the decision tab is a yellow status, right? Meaning I have the majority of that information filled out, but I'm still missing some key info. Maybe I'm doing this quickly. Maybe a student is talking to me and I got distracted, whatever it is. You got a phone call and we come back to it and we're not sure what we're missing on the decision tab. Again, I can click that 90% up top. And I see oh, okay, the only unchecked thing is that I never added that decision. So again, I can click it. It's going to take me to this tab. And I can see, oh yeah, duh, I forgot to add in that decision. Okay, because we all know, right? There's a lot of distractions throughout the day sometimes. So again, we can click save. Now that we've added all that info, the decision tab goes back to green and we're at 100%. Okay, even though the other two tabs are not required at this point, I still want to go through them quickly. So the evaluation tab is you can add in the areas of evaluation. So for general education, if we want to add in info for that, we can click general education. We could add in the date. Maybe they got evaluated. Let's see, done with Monday, Tuesday. Let's say date of evaluation was Tuesday. We're adding in the title of evaluator. We could say the evaluator's name is test evaluator, and then we can add in all the data that was found during this evaluation. We could add in a chart if we want to, so you can just add in obviously text here, but if we wanted to add in maybe some scores or anything like that, we could click that that chart button. We could add in a chart and we could organize maybe some test scores or something like that if we have that. So there's lots of different options. We could add in bullet points, underlining, bolding. There's a lot of different text features as you're needing to add in different information there. We want to make sure we click save. You see that when I clicked on an area of evaluation, we have these sub bars come up on the left. So we added general education evaluation, but we can also click on this educational impact and add data there if we want to. Right? When I go back, I'm going to click on this evaluation like main menu. And now that I've added information for the general education section, you can see that it's identified by turning green. And so that's just a way for you and other team members to keep track of where was the information added. So you could quickly go in and access that and edit it if needed, or move on to another evaluation if necessary. The final thing, prior notice tab. Again, the prior notice tab looks very similar to the referral prior notice tab. We could add in our notification date, initiation date, if the safeguards and parental rights, procedural safeguards and parental rights were provided and explained. We see this subcategory of 504 action items. So we could say, like, if we've done this, yes, we've done that, and we're getting ready to do the accommodation plan. We could add in information to the narrative. Again, this is each district does certain requirements for prior notice, making certain sections required. And again, as the content experts, I'm sure you're all aware of what's required for 504 eligibility. All right, again, for these, since they're not yellow, I'm not going to fill them in, but we can see that we could add the description of the proposed or refused action, the reason, right? Other reasons, the reason we rejected different options, descriptions, all of that narrative for the prior notice. Again, maybe we have created our eligibility, but we're getting ready for the meeting. So I could come and I could print my draft. So I click that print button. Again, that print button appears on any tab in the record. And I want to print all the documents, all those pages. I click preview. And here's my document. I can print this out. I can share it. Any information.
You keep scrolling. We just wanted
Oh,
to see
I'm sorry. Yeah, let me open that again. And so that is a good reminder. When you open the draft document, it actually doesn't save anywhere. So if you wanted to save this, you would need to make sure you save it to your computer or, your drive or somewhere, unlike the finalized record. That would save in your downloads, but the draft will go away immediately. All right, Stephanie, what page did you want to see?
Just all of them. Just kind of
Okay.
just keep scrolling. Yeah, it's just so we can see what it looks like.
I can make that a little bigger. So you can see that's my chart that I just did as an example. So this is where you could print out that signature page
Mm-hmm.
and the prior notice.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. All right. Any other questions about the 504 eligibility before we go through the locking process?
No.
None for me. Thank you.
None for me either.
Perfect. Love it. Okay. One thing that I do want to highlight is when we click out of the eligibility and we're just on that tab, you can see that, right? The meeting date, populates there, my type of 504 eligibility, the decision that we entered, the program, right? 504 populates, and you'll see that the eligibility expiration date isn't there yet. Those expiration dates will appear once the records are locked. So if you're ever wondering like, oh, I thought I entered everything, why are some fields blank? It's because it'll appear once it's locked. The other thing I want to highlight is you'll see this print button at the top of every tab. But in order to print the draft, you can't use this print button. You have to be inside that draft record. So if I click print here, nothing really is going to be an option to print. I have to click into that record and print this way to print those draft documents. Can be a little confusing, so I just wanted to highlight that difference. All right, so at this point, let's say we've had our meeting, we printed out that signature page, everyone who attended, filled out that signature page. I need to attach it to my document. I can click on that paper icon, attach a file, choose my little signature page again. And it is going to require both of those fields. So it's going to require you to name it. And then it's also going to require you to classify it. Again, your list of options is probably going to be a lot shorter than this. But the document or the system will require you to do those things for the document. Then I can click upload. Again, you can see I can download it, change the classification. I can also, change the title if needed. Once I already created, I could add that. And it will timestamp everything, which is quite nice. You can see that this is exactly when I just uploaded that document. So, if you're wondering like, oh, when did I do that? Is that the updated form? You can see that timestamp, which is quite nice. Again, I could delete it if I accidentally, uploaded the wrong document or something like that. I can go ahead and click save. And now at this point, again, you can see that blue circle paperclip icon appeared. And again, that just shows, yes, there was something attached to this document. I'm ready to lock this record. And before I do that, sometimes we know maybe the 504 eligibility is being worked on, but I still need to go ahead and create that 504 plan. If the eligibility is unlocked, you would still be able to create a 504 plan. I'm just locking it before we move on just for like simplicity's sake. But the system will allow you to have two major records unlocked at the same time. So if I was working on the referral and the eligibility, I could have those two unlocked at the same time. Before I could lock the eligibility, I would have to lock that referral, right? It has to go in that order. But the system would let you like work on two records at the same time. If, for example, you have the referral unlocked and the eligibility unlocked, then you would not be able to create that 504 plan because you can only have two, right? And that would be three. But again, for simplicity's sake, we're done with this eligibility. We're ready to lock it before we create that 504 plan. I'm going to click that padlock and I'm ready to lock it. We see that's locked. We see the eligibility expiration date, right? Auto-populated once it was locked. And now we're ready for our plan record. So we're going to click on the plan. We're going to click on this create, right? Same kind of initial steps like all the other tabs. And again, we should only have one option here. If you see special education records as an option, that means something wasn't created quite right, okay? Or the decision was changed. So we should only see those 504 options. You'll see right here, it says copy over minimum data from previously locked record. And right now we can't check that because obviously there isn't a previous 504 record or 504 plan record. If we were creating like another 504 plan and the student already had one, then we could check that and it would bring over a little bit of the data, like the notifications tab and some other, or not, it would bring over like certain tabs. Your district would determine that in their codes. So that's a way sometimes to like save a little bit of time if nothing has changed in the records. But for right now, this is the student's first 504 plan, so we can't copy over anything and we're ready to create it. So we click create, it's gonna pull up, and again, you're gonna see a lot of the same similarities that we've seen with the other records. We see that we have the tabs on the left side. Certain ones are required with those compliance checks. Certain fields are yellow, right? The required ones. So we can quickly click through this. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's maybe the 504 plan, the meeting date was yesterday. And I'm going to stick. So because we're doing, right, again, the tabs need to be in chronological order. So if you remember, our referral was Monday at 8 o'clock. Our eligibility was Monday at 8:05. Now we're on Wednesday, so we could have an 8 o'clock meeting again because we're still, right, chronologically later, right? So we have those filled out, and now we need to fill out our purpose to develop a Section 504 accommodation plan. I'm going to click save. And again, we see that the notification tab turned yellow. If I'm looking at this and I'm like, I entered my information, what is missing? I can click back at this 40% at the top. And I can see that for the 504 plan, it requires parent contact information. And so you'll see, again, this is something that your district will determine what types of contact methods fulfill that compliance requirement. For this demo, I can see that it either needs to be an email, letter, or like a parent portal. That's like another feature we have in IEP Online. I don't believe your district uses that. So we would need it to be either mail or letter. So if, for example, let's say I come in here, I'm ready to add my parent contact. I click add contact attempt. And let's say, I'm not aware of the compliance requirements. So I say, I talked to mom on the phone on Wednesday. We'll make Jasmine the mom. And I talked to her. She said, yes, she will be there. And I click save. Right, I've added in the parent contact, but you'll see that it's still yellow, right? It's still not totally compliant. And so again, if I'm confused or unsure, I can click on that percentage. I see the compliance and it says parent contact method must be email or letter. I say, oh, okay, I entered it as a phone call. That's not good enough for my district. Like I need to do the compliance requirement. So I need to add in another contact method. And I also emailed mom the invitation to the meeting when I talked to her on the phone or after I talked to her on the phone. And she emailed back confirming, yes, she can come. Now that I've added in one of the contact methods that is compliant for my district, that tab turns green. So that's a good example, I think, of like using that percentage at the top of why it can be so applicable to see like what you're missing, or like why something's not turning 100% green, because there's a few kind of tricky bits. So just like the other tabs, we have our meeting participants that we can edit. If we've added people to our bank, the same admin, first name, last name, is going to come to this 504 plan meeting. I can quickly click that plus and add him, and I see him under my meeting participants. Again, I can edit certain things. I don't need double admin. Maybe I don't need, someone else coming, so I could delete them if needed. Again, they would show up as yellow if they were required to be there per your district's codes. Coming out of here, we have our plan record or our plan tab. And so we can go ahead and enter our dates. I'm going to stick with starting on Wednesday, and then I'm just going to make it 1 year minus a day for my end date. Okay, I could add anything. I can add my text. If I need to explain any, if I need to add my explanation of major life activities impacted, could add all of that there. Once I click save, we see our planning tab is complete. So technically we could lock the record now if needed. For accommodations tab, we're going to go through and add some accommodations for this student. So to add accommodations, we're going to click this blue plus button. There's going to be 3 different types of accommodations that you can add. It's a classroom, a testing, or a custom classroom. And we're just going to go through quickly and add one of each. So if I add a classroom accommodation, this would be a drop-down list of classroom accommodations that your district has added as options to select. So again, this is, our fake data. Your district would have, their own list here. But let's say for this student, I need to have their accommodation for classroom is preferred seating. For this, again, your district would have options to pick here. So we could say preferred seating, yes, this needs to happen in all classes and in all settings, let's say. So again, you can pick those 2 options. If for some reason this accommodation only needs to happen for half of the plan record, you could adjust these dates if needed. For this student, we're just going to keep it the whole time. And so that's how you add a classroom accommodation. Again, it's like a drop down that your district has decided. Now, if this was the only accommodation I wanted to add for this student, I could click save and it would save it and take me back to the previous page. If I want to add multiple accommodations, these buttons in the left are going to help me do that quicker than like clicking save, going out, coming back. It keeps this tab open or this window open. So I'm ready to add another accommodation. So I'm going to click this blue plus. And so it's going to save the one I just added, and I'm ready to add a testing accommodation. Okay, again, this would be a drop-down list that your district has added. And so maybe for this student, they need a calculator accommodation for tests. And I'm going to say, right, the location is testing and during testing. Again, those drop downs would be options. You also could type in here if I needed to add like a specific test. I could add, that location and frequency. I could type that in addition, right, to picking something from the drop down. You have those 2 options. So if there's like really something student specific, you could type that in. Okay, so I have my testing accommodation added for calculator, and I want to add another accommodation. I can click this plus, okay? And I can, the 3rd type, so we've done classroom accommodation, testing accommodation, and now we can do a custom classroom accommodation. So this would be if you have a classroom accommodation, but it was not an option on the drop-down menu. I could enter a custom classroom accommodation. And so maybe this student needs to have frequent bathroom breaks. So I could type that in again, and I could either type in the location and frequency. So maybe like all classes, all around. Again, I could edit those dates if needed. Now, as I'm adding in those accommodations, if I realize like, oh shoot, I made a typo on the previous accommodation I listed, but I still, want to keep adding more, I can use these arrows down here at the bottom to go back to edit more. So if I need to let's say, edit the testing accommodation. Maybe, the location should be something different. Maybe it's just in math class for those testing that they need a calculator. I could go back in and edit that, and I can use those arrows. So these arrows and these plus buttons, or the plus button, really are just like helping to navigate and add accommodations and edit them quicker than clicking save and coming back and adding the next one. It just is like a little bit of a time saver, keeping that same window open to edit all this. Now, let's say at this point I've added my 3 accommodations, I'm done. Those are all the accommodations I need to add right now for this student. I can come out and I can click save. And you'll see, right, the 3 accommodations, the location that I added them for, and the start and end date. You see those 2 middle ones are like blank because it's going the entire time frame of this plan. Again, if I added an accommodation by accident and I just need to delete it, I could come over here to the far right and click that X to delete something. Maybe, right, I was wrong, they don't need a calculator for math tests. I could confirm it and it would be deleted. If I wanted to add more accommodations, I could click on that blue plus again. At this point, let's say I want to print the 504 plan for the meeting, or I just want to see, how these accommodations are going to show up on the PDF. Again, I can click that print. I can select the specific ones if I only wanted to click or print the accommodations plan. But for this purpose, I just want to see all the pages. So I'm going to click preview. I can make this a little bigger so you can see. So we see at the top, it's 6 pages. On every page, it's going to, just like all the PDFs, it's going to print the student information at the top. So we have our notice of meeting. You can see for the participants, this is something that I haven't highlighted yet. For this administrator that I keep adding as like first name, last name, you can see that by adding that info, and if I added, anything else, it would print there, not just their title. So that's the benefit of adding the person's real name, is that it would show there. And that's also why those banks come in handy. We can see our contact, attempt report, the plan. So we see these 3 accommodations we just added, printed out. Our signature page, and then our prior notice and a consent page. Cancel out of that. So again, I just want to show you the prior notice tab. Again, this is something that looks very similar to all the prior notice tabs that we've seen on the previous records. We want to add, our consent, our rights explained. We could add in like a reason or a date if maybe consent was no, and that would stop all timelines, but we could add in that reason if applicable. We can add in our action of our initiation and notification date, our 504 plan type. Again, we have our action items. So yes, we've done all 3, and we can add in our narrative also. Right now, any questions about 504 plans before we, lock this record and move on with some of those steps?
Not for
No,
me,
we're-
thank you.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
good.
No.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so we're ready to lock this. We're ready to get out. I'm gonna click the plan at the top. And so again, just like with the eligibility, you see that there's certain fields that populate because they're the exact data that I just entered for the meeting date, for the start date, for the end date. But again, you see that the meeting due date and the plan expiration date do not populate yet. Right? That's something that will populate once I lock it. Again, we've had our meeting. We have our signature page completed. We're going to add that. We have to title it, classify it, upload it. I'm going to cancel out of this. Again, we see that blue icon appear. And now we're ready to lock this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click that padlock button. We're going to lock it. Okay, and so here now we see our meeting due date and plan expiration date populated. And we have a new button that appears, and it is this pen paper icon. So this pen paper icon, it's not super obvious, but this is how you create an amendment. So if I needed to create an amendment for this 504 plan, I would click this paper and pen icon, right? Maybe in a few months, we need to change something in it. We could add in the date. For now, I'm just going to use today's date. Again, that wouldn't be totally make sense the next day amending it, but perhaps depending on the situation. So we would add in the date and the time and click create. You can see that because it's an amendment, certain fields have been brought over. And so you'll see that I'm already starting with 2 yellow symbols instead of complete red. If we're unsure what needs to be complete, I could come up here to that percentage and see, okay, I need to add parental contact and I need to add a planning start date. And we know that that would be on that planning tab, all of that. So for right now, I'm not going to go through this, but I just wanted to show you. So when we come back to the plan tab, how that amendment looks is, and this is kind of something that's tricky sometimes. So it looks maybe at first glance like the 504 plan we just created disappeared. It has not. What it has done is kind of collapse all into one folder. And so you can see that this folder has a plus. So if it ever looks like what just happened, where is it? Look for that plus symbol and you can click it and it'll, expand that folder so you see all the records. Now it doesn't collapse them all the time. It does it at certain times. So if you look here and you don't see what you're supposed to see, look for that plus icon with that folder and it'll bring it all out. Well, you can see that I have my 504 plan that we just created and locked, and now I have my amendment. It's unlocked, it's in draft form. We have this, you see like the dates moved up to the amendment because that'll be the most recently locked record now. I want to show how to create like a new plan after a year, but are there any questions about an amendment?
I don't think so, but you are right. Sometimes it is a little weird how it shows up. So
Yeah, and people panic because it looks like it
yeah,
deleted
I
it.
mean, yes, until you see it actually in practice, it's and yeah, I don't know. And then also another thing is the amendment has to be locked for you to start a new year's 504. Just so
Correct. Yes, thank you. And I'll show that in just a sec.
I don't have any questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so just like what Stephanie was saying, if you needed to create a 504 plan, then you wouldn't be able to create that right now because the amendment is unlocked. So if, for example, like I forgot that and I come up here to create, you're not going to see that you can create another 504 plan. You could only create, a prior notice or a manifestation. So let's come out of this and let's say, let's say I made a mistake and I accidentally created an amendment, but I need to create that annual 504 plan instead. So I could come here and I could delete this amendment. Okay, you can see that now I'm back to normal. I have that 504 plan. It has all the dates. And when I come back and click, so I still have that amendment button, right? That pen and paper icon. But for this student, I don't need an amendment. I just need to create, it's been a year or coming up on a year. I'm ready for that next plan. I come up here to create, and now you will see, right, the 504 plan. We still see prior notice and manifestation. I'm going to talk about transfer in just a sec, but now we have our 504 plan. So I could, because this is the second one, there's already an initial one, I could click copy over minimum data. And you'll see this warning too, because again, we're just doing like fake dates. It gives a warning that like, oh, it's not due for quite a while. Are you sure this is actually what you wanted to create? If I say yes, because we're doing this for our example. And if I click back to the plan tab, you'll see now, right, that we have our initial. So they'll stack on top of each other. The most recent will be at the top. And then, right, it just moves up that way. For this student, let's say I'm going to come back to my student roster. So I want to go back to my caseload. And now I can see that this student, right, this one that we were just working with, now has that checkbox on the far right side. And again, we know that it has that checkbox because we have a 504 locked plan record. If we were to look, we can see, okay, we have these dates and we see that unlock for the plan. We see that symbol. That's because we just created that second plan record. We haven't locked it yet, but because the first one is locked, that's why we have that checkbox. And the checkbox comes in handy because if we check it, this is a quick way to print 504 at a glances. So if we check that box and I come up here to print, I see we could print progress reports and other things that appear, but 504 at a glance is what I want, and I can click that and click preview. So it's a quick, easy way, and the reason why this way is really nice is because you can do it for multiple students at a time. So if I wanted to print for all of my students, I could click that checkbox at the top and it would select all my students. If, I just wanted to pick a few that I know I need to print their 504 at a glance documents, I can click those two, come back up, click print. You can click 504 at a glance, preview. And it will print all in one document, but each student on their own page, obviously, for easy distribution. So that's a quick way to print multiple 504 at a glances for a lot of students. The other way, if you wanted to print a 504, so let's say for the student that we've been working with, I want to go back to the plan tab. I could click directly on that plan date. It would take me directly to that plan tab. And for this locked 504, I could come in here and print a 504, print, oh, sorry, it's a little different with 504s. I apologize. So the 504 at a glances are from that caseload, that student roster page. If I wanted to print that full 504 record, I would need to come into each student's plan tab and click the download button. Okay, so you can't, there's no way to batch print the full record for multiple students at a time. You can only print the 504 glances for multiple students at a time. And I can go back to the student roster page. All right, right now, there's one more thing that I want to show you about transfer 504s. But before we do that quickly, are there any questions about printing 504 documents or printing any documents that you need?
I don't have any.
Perfect. All right, you guys are so easy. I love it. Okay, so the final thing that I want to show is if you have a student come into your district that has a 504 from a previous school district, maybe like, let's say they moved from Oregon. What you can do, so I'm going to come to a student, I'm going to use this bottom student. They're in 7th grade. They don't have any records because they're new to our district, but I got the PDF version of their 504 records from their Oregon school district. So what you're going to do, we're going to click on their name to go into their account. And we're going to go to the plan tab. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a transfer record. And we call these skeletal records because essentially they'll take the bare minimum from those PDFs to create those skeletal records so the dates populate into IEP Online, so you can run them in reports and you can create, the 504 plan you need to, but you don't have to start from scratch for this student with creating like a new referral and a new eligibility because they've already had that and you have that PDF of that documentation. So for a student like that, we would come to the plan tab and we'd click this create. And it's automatically going to show up different. And it's because, right, we're just going to be inputting that transfer information. So let's say, different districts do it a little differently, whether this is when they enter your district or the date you have on the PDF. However your district uses that, we're just going to say Monday is the day to keep things simple for this. And the meeting date was Monday too. If we want to do the request date as like today, this is when they came to the district, this is when we requested it, but the meeting date happened, in the past, we could input that also. So you're using that PDF to get these dates. We know that it would be a guidance team and the decision would be to refer to 504. So with this, we're just putting like that basic info in. Consent for evaluation, yes, I see that on the PDF and I see that the date, right, that the consent was given. So I click create. And then it's going to take me to creating that transfer skeletal for the eligibility. So again, I'm going to use my PDF and I'm going to say, okay, I see that the eligibility date was this day, that time, the type was a 504 eligibility, and the decision, yes, the student did require a 504 plan. If we wanted to add more information in, we could click this button to switch to like a transfer skeletal to add in a little bit more information from that eligibility PDF if we wanted, but it's not required. Again, this is like the quick, easy way to add in that info from the PDFs from a previous district. So then you can move forward creating the student's next 504 plan, or the next documents required. So we're going to click a 504 and I'm going to show you real quick how those records look now that we've created those. Okay, so we come to their demographic tab, right? This is their student info. We come to their GT tab and we see the dates that we just inputted. So if I click in it, we see that it's locked. So it automatically locks it. If we click here, we see that it has those dates that I added, but it doesn't have, anything else. So we didn't add any data besides those specific dates. And the other thing that you'll notice is that there's no record created, no finalized record. So what you would want to do is come in and attach those PDFs that you had to use. So in the future, other people could reference that and it just like ties it all in. Right? Same with the eligibility. You'll see based off those initial quick dates that we put in, it creates this record that's locked. It shows our expiration date. It calculates all of that. Again, if we were to click in it, you'd see that really it's like a skeleton, right? It has those bare bones. It doesn't have, any real data in there. It just has those dates. So we again would want to create or attach that PDF that we used from Oregon or wherever. And then same kind of thing for the plan. Now we can create that 504 plan using the PDF that we have. And again, the reason that you would create it like this is if a student transfers to your district, they have 504 records from a previous district, and you just want those dates and that basic info in IEP Online so you can create the right records moving forward, and you don't have to start from scratch for that student. That's a quick explanation of the transfer process. I don't know how often your district, gets students that transfer from other districts with records already, but some districts use this a lot, some not so much. But it's a really great way to not have to start from scratch for a student that already has records. All right. I'm trying to think. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to leave some time for any questions, anything else like specific that you want to see or review.
I just had a question of, so if the counselors choose to move forward with this platform, what would be the best way to get current students inputted in there, right? So like, rather than having to input everything for each student, would it be better to do just a transfer skeletal, even though it's not a pretty system? I don't like the transfer skeletals very much because they don't look, not everything's filled in, but I don't know. I was just curious if you knew that, or what would be the best way to get current students on there?
Yeah, the transfer skeletal is what we would recommend.
Okay.
Because it's gonna just kind of like what we said, it's gonna give you that quick time frame kind of thing.
Mhm.
But like you said, it doesn't have all the full data, but that would get those previous records in there with the correct dates,
Mhm.
attaching those PDFs so that you can move forward and not like create everything from scratch necessarily. So yes, creating
Okay.
those transfer skeletals is what we would recommend.
Okay.
The other thing that I wanted to kind of check back in, I said this at the beginning, is right now your district does not have these timelines turned on for 504s. So, and the timelines in the sense are these dates appearing on the student roster page, which can be really helpful, like we said, for not only just like seeing at a glance what the dates are, but pulling those reports. Um, I don't know if this is something, Stephanie, that like your district would want turned on, but it, in my opinion, like helps a lot with keeping track of dates. So I just kind of want to touch base on that of like your district does not have that on right now. It's a quick, easy thing to turn on. So something to ponder, and you can let us know in the future if you do want us to turn that on.
So yes, and I, while you were talking about it earlier, went into the admin side to try to find where that is, to try to turn it on. Because I could do that. I just was curious where that was.
Yeah,
Because
it
go ahead.
might be something that we have to turn on for you.
Okay, because I see there's in the preference or in the codes, there's timelines and then there's reminders and it has it all in there, but there isn't something for me to say if it's on or off. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I can do
Okay.
that for you right now if you would like.
If you want to, just in case, even if they choose not to move forward, then at least I don't have to try to figure it out later on of to do it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, if you could, that would be great.
Yeah, so there's certain codes that we just have to do for you, and I think that's one of them.
Yeah, because I scrolled down to the bottom and
Oh,
then
okay.
I
So
like,
it actually looks like one that you probably can do on your own, but I'll turn it on for you. It's gonna be
okay.
here where it's like features district,
Yep.
and it's this 504 timeline.
Oh, okay. I
So I'll
can
just save
click
that
it.
for you. And so
Perfect.
now you should see that.
Yeah, I've played around with those features before and then I screwed up something. So I don't click it anymore because I did
There,
like
I get it.
something on there and then it really screwed everything up. So I'm like, I'm never touching that tab again.
Yeah. So by turning that on, you'll see these timelines for 504 just like you would see for special education records. And then the other thing that you can see is, let me click on this student, is on their demographic tab, you'll also see these timelines appear too. So these are another way to kind of make sure you're in compliance with those timelines, with those dates, is you'll see it on the demographic tab. As it's approaching a date, it'll turn yellow triangle, kind of like warning, date to be aware of. And then if it's overdue, it'll show in red, and you'll get some messages about that. So that's another nice bit about those timeline turn on, is showing it here for all the detailed timelines, and then the dates on the student roster page.
When you guys moved to IEP Online 3.0, how much additional training would people using 504 side of IEP Online need? So I know like our district as a whole is going to need training to look at that, but how much is it going to change? Do they need to be a part of that? Is it a separate training?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that Sarah is working on kind of
Okay.
nailing down a little bit. So I can ask her and get back to you if she has like a idea of what that would be. But it's in a sense like the 504 is going to be very similar in the process. It's going to look a little different, so there will be like some more training, but I don't know if she's going to try to kind of like lump it all in one or not. So I will ask her about that.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, and it's actually like right now it's a little confusing in IEP Online, for students if they've had special education referral or special education records and then they need 504 or vice versa. It's a little complicated, and in 3.0 it's going to be a lot simpler and kind of separate, which will be nice again for those students that need both or kind of flip-flop sometimes. So
Mhm.
there'll be some
Yeah, I did
changes,
hear
but
that.
overall.
I just wasn't sure. I know that they had to push that out, so I was just curious if I needed, when we did the training, if I needed to invite others to do it. So whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I'll ask Sarah and I'll reach out back to you with some
Okay.
answers on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions for our last few minutes?
I don't have any. It seems pretty intensive, uh, but very systematic. So I like that it pushes us through in a very specific order that helps me with my thinking and not to get ahead of myself, because that's what happens to me sometimes. But and a little bit scary because it does seem, pretty involved. But I mean, we do have people in our buildings that use this, so I feel like we would have resources to go to. And then once we learned all the nuances of it, we, could feel overwhelming at first. I can see that, but I don't know, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And that's all with those compliance checks and the orderliness of the system. I think that helps, but absolutely, any new system is overwhelming at the beginning. But that is what's nice about your district is, to your point, there are other people who use the system for special education records, so they should be able to help a lot because it's the same process, same nuances, like you said. Well, I'll go ahead and stop this recording, and Stephanie, I'll get